Hey folks, this is week 7, and we're at a great coffee shop, Tuvalu Coffee in downtown Verona. Now, me personally, I'm not a coffee guy, but I love iced tea. And so what I've got today is a blueberry iced tea, unsweetened with a little artificial sweetener, and boy, is it tasty. Well, today I want to tell you a testimony about a phenomenal woman. Her name is Rosaria Butterfield. Her story begins like this. She is a professor of English at Syracuse University, and she's also a lesbian. And she starts off on this project where she wants to study the religious right and its views towards women. And so she starts a research project. She sets out to write a book. And in the course of doing this, part of her research is she goes to a Promise Keepers conference, and she listens to how the men speak of their wives and being servants and heads of the family. And she writes an article that's not very flattering. And in this article that she publishes in a local paper in Syracuse, she gets a lot of response. But one of the response letters really gets her attention. It's from a pastor, a local pastor named Ken Smith. And in the article, he disagrees with her views on the Bible and on lesbianism, but he says to her, hey, I'd love to get together with you and have an extended discussion. And so what she does, she ends up calling him, and over the course of the next 2 years, she ends up meeting with him the whole time. And so as a part of her research, where she's reading the Bible, she goes over to Ken's house and they begin to talk about theology. And as God would have this plan, she never finishes her book. In fact, she comes to believe that the scripture is true about what it says about God and what it says about men. She comes to Christ, and she ends up marrying a Reformed Presbyterian church pastor. Now, when it comes to convictional kindness, what we want to do is we want to take the posture that Ken Smith took with Rosaria Butterfield. Ken wrote a letter in response to the article that Rosaria wrote. He didn't agree with her views on lesbianism. He didn't agree with her views on Christianity, but he wrote in such a way that was a gentle and clear argument, and one in which she felt like he was honoring to her. And so what does she do? She calls him, and then when he gets the phone call, he invites her over to his house with his family, where they begin to share meals, and they have these discussions. And so he wants to share the gospel, but he also wants to establish relationship. And that's, I think, an important principle that we need to remember. Now, when we are being faithful witnesses to Christ, we're going to have opposition, right? And if you're like me, there's a tendency when I'm faced with opposition to think that the person whose views are different than mine is my enemy. And that's just simply not true. Because the person who's behind the ideas that are against Christ is Satan. So how do we fight? What we do is we talk with kindness. We try to develop a relationship. We want to be clear about our gospel positions. We want to be charitable, especially when the other individual has got some right principles that they're trying to put forward. And when we learn to fight in this way, it is the best way to reach the hearts of the person that we're trying to communicate with, while at the same time tearing down the enemy's false ideas. So we need to remember that it's the truth and the grace of Jesus Christ that can tear down different ideas that stand up against the gospel. And I recognize, if you're like me, this is something that we need a lot more practice in, engaging with people on matters of faith. And so what's going to be happening soon at our church is 2 young men, Femi Sequoia and Joe Holford, are going to lead us in a series of discussions on things like the LGBTQ issues and politics and race and some very kind of difficult issues. And they're going to put forward some of the common positions as well as some of the Christian perspectives on these things, and help us to learn how to have charitable discussions with our neighbors. So look for that coming soon. And thank you. This is our last video for the Onward series. It's been a blessing for us to work on this series, and we hope that we've helped you how to be strange, to keep Christianity strange in the midst of a modern American society.